Welcome to the Emo Social Club podcast, the podcast about music, news, and interviews. I am Brian.
And I'm Lizzie, and we're here today with Alex Exists. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Happy to be part of the club.
Hell yeah. Tell us a bit about yourself. You exist. You are Alex. That's about it.
Well, most of the time I think I don't exist, to be honest. And that's kind of where the name came from, to kind of put some permanence into that. But yeah, I mean, that's what I go by. I'm a producer and musician here, living in Toronto, Canada. Mm-hmm. And I've been playing music in various bands my whole life. Most recently, this is kind of a solo project that I've launched, and I released a record last year, but I've been playing in bands like over 10 years now. And yeah, I have a passion for video as well. I do a lot of video production. That's kind of, what I do when I moonlight as here, I guess, making various media. And yeah, I love producing music, love, all things creative. And how did I get here? I don't know how I got here. My parents brought me here. They took themselves here and they escaped communism back in ye old country out there. Yeah. Around that time, by going on vacation, because you weren't allowed to leave otherwise. Mm-hmm. So they did that, and I'm very thankful for that. And now we're here, and we're doing our best.
See, we got the full origin story there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you should know. I mean, you love Elizabeth Bathory as well. Mm-hmm. And that she's from... she reigned over the same territory for where they were from, it was Hungary back in the day, but it's like modern day Czechoslovakia, Poland, kind of hybrid, because all those countries
just kind of like fused together and broke up together. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Transylvania.
Hell yeah.
My dad wasn't born too far away from there, actually. And yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful place. If you ever actually get a chance to go, the architecture is amazing, the people are amazing, and it's not quite as dark as it used to be.
They got out of the ye olden ages, and they said, "Hey, we're not going back again."
Yeah, but they have that little bit of like darkness, which is still cool. They have that edge.
Yeah, the Eastern European edge of beautiful Gothic architecture and a long storied history, and then everybody's just super chill and nice and just want to hang out and drink coffee, drink vodka, smoke a cigarette, and talk about things. It's essentially a country of podcasters.
Oh my god! Except they're not podcasting. They're normal. They're able to not have like a content brain, and they're just like, I'm vibing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you are now you're on your own in this project. You're not working in a band, although you've done it for 10 years. What was it like to say, I'm just going to go it on my own and I'm going to create music as myself versus with other people?
Yeah, and I still make a lot of music with other people. I still very much have a band. A lot of the people who used to play in my older band are currently performing with me in this band, but I wanted to go in a different direction because in my previous projects there were multiple songwriters and producers in the projects, and it was great, and it kind of had its time and not technically officially over, but for this project I really wanted to explore the things that were burning inside of me and that I really felt I need to get out that I couldn't in the previous iterations of the music, and that just led me to try something on my own. But I'm still collaborating with a ton of people. It's just that I mainly do the songwriting and have a bigger role in the production these days.
Was that something you were missing before? Or I mean, a lot of bands now I think the collaboration side of being in a band is obviously the main value of working with other people and having one person who's like, I'm going to focus on guitar or focus on drums versus like versus everything. When you're the one guy, it's like, okay, I got to make all these parts, I got to write everything, I got to promote it, I got to do all this stuff. Like, do you feel like there's a different sense of collaboration now that you're just doing it by yourself versus what you were doing with the bands?
Yeah, it's exactly like you said, and you give up a little, there's pros and cons, and you get something different. So with more creative control, let's say, over the visuals and the overall direction and the music, you do give up the collaborative stuff that you're talking about, which is people all kind of doing their bit. So, if it's my thing, so to speak, I am usually the person who has to do the socials and the management. I do have a management that I work with, but all that kind of stuff, guitars, all the musical parts. But I love the input of other musicians, and I invite my friends to play with me, and it's great. We all inspire each other still. But, and they trust this whole exists kind of world of music and songs. So, I'm super grateful for that.
And you've also recently put out a single with Sam Casey as well. And watching the music video, it's very like cinematic. I was like, oh wow, it's very engaging. It's very like up and over the top in a good way. But it was also a lot of this production put behind it, and a lot of like the theming that goes into it. It's like more fantastical is like the better word that I can like describe it like to the ear. And I'm just wondering, like, how do you kind of like tap into creating that type of world and music?
Well, everything you just described, which I love, is kind of what we love, and we really strive for that highly imaginative, pseudo-surreal, cinematic, larger-than-life thing, while keeping it kind of like somewhat relatable. So it's just something that we've always loved doing, that I've always had an affinity for, that kind of cinematic thing that takes you away. All my favorite art takes me away to a completely different place and just like sweeps me off my feet. So, we just want to have the same effect on other people, whether it be positive or negative. I always felt like the best thing to do would to be if like a piece of art like kind of goes into your psyche and like rearranges all the furniture in your head, and then you leave and you're like, well, like you just see everything slightly different now. And I think that's really powerful. And thank you for noticing that, because we definitely tried.
That is like a very apt metaphor that I've never heard before about it. Like, someone's coming in, redesigning your room and saying, okay, you live like this now instead. And how many times I've like done a trip to IKEA and been like, all right, I'm changing everything, I'm moving it around. And then it's like, oh, I feel like different. I feel like I'm seeing the world differently. It's a very apt metaphor. Yeah.
And I think with music, when we hear those things that change our lives, and, we don't, my life will never be the same. It doesn't have to be extremely profound. It could just be a little bit, that one thing you look at may not be the same anymore, whether it's a certain element of a relationship or a certain building. I don't know. It just depends. So with Sam Casey, she's always up for going over the top as well. So I love collaborating with her. And it's, to be honest, it's kind of hard to find people who, don't want to be so subtle sometimes. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. It's good to be like over the top, I feel. It's better than just being, midline.
Yeah.
Yeah, or just do whatever comes to, like, we always try to, play it chill sometimes, but we're like, no, let's bring the bubble guns and just shoot bubbles, because it'll, let's mix, like in one of my other videos, we had like a flamethrower gun with bubbles, and we just thought the contrast of the two things was so interesting, but also looked amazing.
Yeah.
And, and music should be fun and crazy and wild and push boundaries, so that's kind of my ethos.
I agree. I think it should be exciting. Emo music didn't draw me in because it was like not melodramatic and over the top. It was because it was like I could find a lot of chill artists in every other genre. I could find, that staying in your lane type of music in every other genre. And it's like, no, I want something that's like going to blow my mind or be exciting visually, be exciting musically. It's like, I don't want to just stay safe. I don't want Guns N' Roses 2.
Not Guns N' Roses 2.
I liked Guns N' Roses for a minute there. I'm just like, yeah, then you've heard it and you're like, I don't want that again. I want something that is like that exciting, new, Like, yeah, just exciting.
You want New Escape the Fate is what you're saying.
Don't want New Escape the Fate. We don't need that.
Well, the coolest thing about emo for me is the brutal honesty as well. It's just like brutal honesty and, like you said, excitement and just letting it all out there, even if it's not cool, so to speak. And yeah, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's always, yeah, I think to like be able to produce any type of like music, but also be like that soul bearing, even if it is cringy, it like opens up a deeper level between the artist and the listener too.
Absolutely. You get to see who they are. It's not this slick kind of show. It's all like the crazy multiple personalities they may have.
Yeah, well, I think it's also as you're rearranging the furniture in your brain, you're growing, you're learning, you're discovering new things. It's like, so's the artist too, though. Like, they're also learning about themselves in the creation of the music and putting it out there and saying, I don't know, my furniture is changing up too. You know, my rooms are shuffling.
Yeah, I completely repainted it and I put wallpaper on one side.
You did the whole like HGTV. You're like, I need the accent wall and everything.
Yeah, and I particularly love patterns and styles that clash. Mm-hmm. So mixing polka dots and stripes, you know, chevron and houndstooth, black and brown. Yeah. So I know
that's the controversial one out of those three different ones.
Yeah.
So I also saw that in your bio on Spotify that you list some of your inspo. You're kind of across the board. You have like 1975, you have Arctic Monkeys, you have like more modern iterations. But then I see a sharp turn where I'm like, this is different. It lists like Captain Beefheart, and I'm like, this is so neat. I don't listen to it, but I have some friends who are really into that type of music, and I'm like, this is so niche and so wild that like I need to understand like it just like the wide range of inspiration you pull from here, and like taking a lot of the Captain Beefheart stuff because they are very not out there in a bad way, but during that time they were a little bit more in that out there type of music genre.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, just to give context to the wide range, I worked at a record store here in Toronto, Cops Records, for a really long time. It was one of my first jobs, and it was so great to expose me to all sorts of types of music. So I really consider myself like a true music lover, where I will definitely pull influence from many different places. And with Captain Beefheart, that was introduced to me at a pretty young age. I don't exactly remember where. I think one of my like musical mentors or producer friends, Tony, and I mean, I love the fantastical, over-the-top, completely alien, you know, arrangements, the artwork, the lyrics. It's just completely out of this world, and it just transported me, and it was just like, what is this? And I listened to the music so many times, but I never heard it until like years later. And I really felt that's when I realized there's a difference between listening to music and really hearing it. And I don't pretend to understand everything that they do, but that really inspired me. And, you know, also the guitar licks really inspired me. I love a lot of the bluesy, angular, spiky guitar stuff that just kind of pokes at you. And, you know, it's very like punk rock, and I love that, but like a different kind of punk rock. And the kind of psychedelic, very colorful lyrics is something that always spoke to me. And actually, I played in a project called Beefheart Project Toronto, which did 20 covers, 2 songs from every Captain Beefheart record. And the challenge was to do all the complicated ones, like note for note, and do some of the more simple ones, like completely different. So yeah, I was part of that project, so I was just slaving like with the musical director, just learning these parts that are so ridiculous. If you know the music, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, we felt insane, but it was really gratifying. It was amazing, and the record's out there, and it was an amazing experience. And now I'm not going to listen to Captain Beefheart probably until about 2030.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Had your fill.
Yeah. But you know, Zappa and, you know, Frank Zappa and other artists like that of that era I really love as well. You know, I have an affinity anybody who like colors outside the lines.
No, that makes sense. Like you're out of the box. You're doing something different.
When I can.
Yeah.
We started an argument the other day because
Oh,
I
no,
said
yeah.
sometimes it's okay to stay in the box. And I said this in a context of like setting some parameters. Like you said, like the ones that are crazy and out there, we're going to hit all the same notes. The ones that are a little bit more simple, we're going to advance on. We're going to create something out of that. And it's like, yeah, you're setting up some rules, right? Because you could go into that and say, yeah, we can't play this complicated one. We're just going to goof around and make up whatever we can. But you're like, no, we have these like stringent things that we're going to try to follow. And so I was like, some artists have to pull back a little bit and say, I don't need to do everything that's available to me. Sometimes I want to just focus on, you know, not adding new instruments or only adding key parts in this song or something like that. And some people were like, no, you have to be outside the box all the time, and you have to always be, you know, there shouldn't be any restrictions, I guess.
Totally. And if you listen to my record, like I'm not so out of the box, like on that level. Like I do think there's a balance as well. And, you know, being in the box, the pros of that is I like actually creativity with restraint a lot. And I think that's great. It really forces you to be more creative when you're only working with one or two things or 4 chords. So yeah, I'm with that. I love both, but I just have an affinity for breaking out of the box.
100%, yeah. I mean, I listen to both, and there's a lot of bands that I think if we're talking about like the 1975, which is one of the influences, like they have the Notes on a Conditional Form record that I was like, this is a little bit like no one told you to stop and you just did like whatever you wanted to do, and there's too many songs and there's too much filler, and it's like, I love the 1975, but this record just feels like it could have been a few songs less, and it feels like it could have been more honed, and it's like just kind of all over the place. So I think that's where it's like the box helps. The box really gets you to like, it gets you to work on what you do best and create the best out of it. And then you do like little tests here and there, and you're like, let me add like a mandolin in this song. And you're
Not
like,
a mandolin.
where did this mandolin come from? You know?
Maybe a theremin.
Oof.
Oh yeah, one of my friends has a theremin.
Dude, I love theremin.
She's just like, I just have it just to have it. I'm
Throw
like,
a theremin
okay.
in there.
Just to have, well, I mean, they are beautiful.
Yeah.
And a great
Yeah.
historical piece of musical art. In my song Camera Boy, I actually have, I played a line on one.
Hell yeah.
See, gotta throw it in.
Got to do it.
They sound great. When you can nail it, it sounds
That's
awesome.
the thing, because there's like no like. I once used one that was like, it had nothing on it, you know, no like notes or whatever. You're just like kind of guessing where you put your hands and all that. And I was like, I don't know how to do this, but I just, after a bit of practice, I was like, I can get something out of it, but it's kind of wherever it wants to go.
Yeah. But don't you feel like a magician kind of when you're playing with
100%.
it?
100%. It feels rad as hell.
You're just like, I'm playing with sound
You're like,
and I have nothing here.
And like some people will look at you and they're like, how's he doing that?
How's he doing that stuff?
Yeah.
It's like, this is invented in the 20s, man. Like, or
Like, ask
earlier.
them.
It's like, no,
Yeah.
this isn't magic anymore.
You know what? It is magic in some forms. Now,
It's-
it's something you would show a Victorian child and they would just like
Yeah.
die, probably.
Yeah. Actually, I got so freaked out from the theremin for a couple years because it does use electromagnetic waves to play, and it's kind of like if you play with one on for extended period of times. I was reading that it is almost like standing in front of a microwave that's on and the door's open
Oh,
the whole
wow.
time. Yeah, so I was like, oh my god. And but then the more I looked into it, I think it's got to be literally like hours. It's got to be on.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I mean, everything has electromagnetic frequency now, but yeah, I mean, it is shooting, you know, essentially low radiation electric pulse to kind of measure your hand distance and stuff.
Damn.
So yeah.
That's
Things
cook-
I didn't know that at all.
cooking a meal
So
on a
theremin players, be careful.
Yeah.
Don't get too into it. Don't
safe.
don't go
Don't
crazy.
sleep next to it.
Don't turn it off when you're done. Don't leave it running.
Put it in the closet. Put it away.
Yeah.
Limit yourself to 1 hour of theremin.
Cover it with a lead blanket.
Oh, not the. Oh no. Listen,
Yeah.
this generation, we have the microplastics, and then we have the theremin radiation poisoning. It all comes back around.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your album. So you had Everybody's Famous drop last June, and getting a little bit back to your inspo, obviously it's very Sgt. Pepper, the Beatles themed with the cover, but obviously very different, distorted, and has a lot of different additions to it that is not the normal Sgt. Pepper vibe. So can you talk about how it was to develop this record?
Yes. So the cover is definitely a piece of irony and satire. So I thought it would be great. And since the record itself is about modern day fame and all the trappings of it, I decided to take one of the most famous rock, like iconic covers of all time and completely flip it on its head and, make it a, kind of bizarre, grotesque, but still beautiful modern iteration of it. So I had the actual Beatles themselves as these like just grotesque aliens, and then obviously modern figures, which were heroes and villains, but it's very arbitrary because I wanted to specifically choose people of our time who are extremely undecided upon. Like you can't really decide whether certain people like Belle Delphine or Michael Jackson, good guy, bad guy, I don't know, but super famous, and fame did something to them. So everybody up there, fame eroded in some way. So it's definitely not like a stroke of love towards it. Like I love that record, whatever, but it was definitely to imply the irony of how bizarre and ugly fame has gotten. So that and we did that as actually we found all these old pictures of the making of that record, and we used that to kind of do the photo shoot. So it was a practical photo done with real people, and then we did digital also to do the cutouts and to make it look like it was on a big mountain and everything, and do all the other fun kind of imagery. And so that really sets the stage for the ironic kind of self-obsessed, ego-driven themes of the record. But other than that, on the surface, like below the surface, it's really about individualism and your individuality in this world and being anonymous, and kind of how amazing it is to be anonymous and not have to perform it on the stage. And it's kind of, at its core, it's about rebelling against the world to keep a sense of your own identity when everything is trying to pull you in all these different directions.
That's really cool.
I think too, just explaining the cover and like the more like harder meaning behind it is that I don't feel like there are as many artists that are going like that deep into it and saying like, hey, this is like what we need to like call into question, and like talk also about like, this entirety of like people just want to be famous, and like anybody could be a creator nowadays. There's accessibility to do it, but nobody's ever talking about like, oh, I made it and now I'm having a bad time.
or making it for the wrong reasons. So, I think fame should always be a byproduct of being amazing and touching people and having that natural sense of community. But sometimes people just want to be the art and be the creators just to get to the fame part. And, I think you can fill in the blanks. There's a whole sorts of problems that come with that. So, I'm just glad you guys appreciate it so much, because it's funny. Some people didn't even know the reference. They're like, oh, that's crazy. It looks like The Simpsons. It's like a Simpsons couch of all these Simpsons characters. I'm like, hey, that's awesome. But it's also a reference to musical history and like twisting it and,
Yeah.
I feel like that is like that's enough of an iconic album. Like I personally don't listen to the Beatles, but like I know, I look at it, I'm like, that's the Beatles. Like,
for sure.
That's so crazy.
Well, I mean, you guys are a hardcore music fan, so
yeah. That was it's one of the largest bands of all time.
You can literally go into any
biggest,
store, even like a Barnes and Nobles or something, and be like the Beatles, and it's like right there.
I feel like it's been referenced a lot too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
For sure. So I just kind of wanted to memify it in that way, but like really hardcore. Like I have O.J. Simpson on there, like all bloodied, and like, you know, he's a hero and he's a villain, you know, or like Karl Marx is the communism guy. He's like a hero but a villain, and you know, so many different people. And we made sure to shoot it really high quality. So if you do download the picture from like my website or even on Instagram, you can zoom in pretty far and there's tons of hidden crazy things. Just saying.
Ooh.
That's very intricate. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the visual component seems very important to your music as well, which I think is something that a lot of, I mean, when you're talking about like this is kind of a weird like little connection I'm making here, but like when you talk about people who are like, I want to become the art and I want to just use that to leapfrog straight to fame, it's like the aesthetics and the visual are very much the important thing. And I think in music sometimes it's kind of secondary, like album covers are just kind of like a photo of the person, or they're just kind of not to say that can't be iconic, but there's a lot less of that concern about the visual side of it, especially in smaller artists who I think like, hey, you need to do a lot cooler stuff with visually. Like that's what's really going to draw in the attention. And not to say there's a hero or villain of the choice of which way to go, but like obviously choosing to be more visual and being more out there and making these grander statements with the visuals of it also probably helps to like get to where you want to go as far as people paying attention to it as well.
For sure. And if you have the bandwidth to do something like that, then it's only going to help, you know, give people more context about where your art comes from and what your music should mean. And like you said, you can have a really fantastic cover that says a lot, and it's just a picture of a person. It really just depends what you do. I tend to go a little bit more maximalist with everything, but yeah, that's just the way. And I'm the same with the music too, and the productions. Like there's like the theremin that you probably wouldn't hear it on first go, but once you mention it, or if you listen in headphones a few times, you'll probably notice, oh, there's a theremin in Camera Boy, or in this song there's like a bunch of heavy breathing to create like a drum, kind of like a percussive drum loop. So I don't know, maybe it's like the spectrum side of me or something, but I just love like getting so in the details.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think that's something that a lot of people do. But I just
actually,
think
and this is one of the things about the solo project as well. So,
yeah.
You know, a band is not always going to entertain your crazy tism, you know, ideas. So
that is, as somebody who's worked in multiple bands too, I'm just like, yeah, when you start to have these crazy ideas, like I was usually the one saying to people like, no, we're not doing that. That's insane. That's so off the beaten path, and we are a nobody band. Nobody knows who we are. We're not going to like go too outlandish because we want people to actually hear us and listen to us. And the more difficult it is to understand what we're trying to do, the more it's going to push people away from actually being our fan. And then it's like when you work alone, you're like, I can do all of it, and I'm putting it all in, and I'm doing the details, I'm doing the little bits because no one can tell me no. And then you're like, okay, I need to be the guy for myself now.
You're literally like, I am my own boss. I am unhinged.
Yeah.
And that unhinged thing is just like the era of my music making right now. It's definitely at its most unhinged, and that's the vibes right now.
Yeah.
You know, what you know, I mean, within reason. I'm not, you know, Beefheart level, really. But maybe one day, maybe the next record.
There you go. You're going to go that next mile, and everyone's going to be like, hey, what happened here?
Oh.
And I'll be like, oh, this is 10 minutes? 10 minutes for every single song? So crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a fan of maximalism in music anyway. So, I mean, I think it's...
Well, it's also like bring back maximalism is like the big thing overall, like for style.
Really?
I'm a fan of it.
Yeah, like going against minimalism and being more like maximalist.
Yeah, I guess like the early 2000s, or maybe it was more like the 2010s, was this whole like delete all your stuff or throw all your things away, like you know, ultra minimalism. And I don't know, to be honest, this is where like the whole my kind of, you know, family's background and like that communism thing really starts like percolating, because they're used to like just like buildings like these like just gray blocks and that minimalism and brutalism aesthetic of just like efficient, practical, no bells and whistles, like just eat, and that's fine, but it's just not something that personally speaks to me.
Yeah. It's always going to be that battle between what you've come from and what you then want to create because of that, I think.
Yeah, I didn't always know that like intellectually. I think I just kind of figured it out as I got older.
Yeah. I blame Lord in 2010, 2011 or around
Pure
that area.
Heroin Lord?
Yeah, because it was like...
That was a fantastic... Oh, what are you talking about?
It's minimalism. It's like, what can we do with just like a drum part and a bass part and vocals? And then she made Royals, and that song fucking rules. It's an incredible song, but then it just inspired a lot of minimalism in that style of music that I'm like, yeah, we needed that out of a lot of the other like maximalist music that had been before it. And then now that we're doing that, it's like, okay, cool, we did that. Now it's time for more of like the big, loud, put everything in it and make something really big from that. And I love Lord. I love Lord's music. So
I was about to say,
no shade
there's
to
no
that. Just,
Lord slander
like,
on this podcast.
when there is something that has been happening in the culture for a long time, there is going to be a movement that says, I don't want to do all that. I want to do this other thing instead.
Oh, yeah.
And it's in everything, but like certainly instrumentation and the maximalism of the music of the mid 2000s, the late 2000s, then early 2010s of being like, nah, drums only and vocals on top of those drums and a little wobble in the background.
And a little
Royals.
wobble. Right now, you kind of mentioned before we jumped onto this interview, you have some like collabs and singles coming up, and want to know like what can you tell us about some of those collabs that are incoming?
So I'm collaborating on a bunch of remixes of the record with some fantastic artists right now. So that should be pretty cool. I'm going to be working with, I think, Sam Casey again on a song. I believe I'm going to work with Martha and the Muffins again on another track. We did a song together on Everybody's Famous called Mindful Madness, which is like a song about, pretty much, coming to terms with one's sanity or lack thereof. And so that's going to be fun. I think I'm going to work on a track with John Orpheus and just a bunch of other people. And it's going to be good for me because I did spend a lot of the record on my own. It was a little bit of a solitary process. Still worked with a lot of people, musicians, producers, but this time... Oh, and Zoe Starra. I'm going to be working with Zoe Starra again. We did a song called Nyctophile previously, so we're going to do another song together. And she's a great artist. They're all great artists. And, yeah, it should be cool. I mean, that's all I can really say about it. But, yeah.
We're always trying to drop the
leaks
hidden
tonight.
info. We're trying to leak stuff, always.
Well, me and Zoe are definitely going to do a song called Milk Teeth. So... about like the loss of innocence and kind of how society seems to like try to own your childhood and your sense of nostalgia. It's like this nostalgia thing, they've just like used it to get inside your mind and kind of control your emotions. So we're gonna explore that, do a song, see if we can make that fun.
It sounds like you can make it fun. There's like marketing research about how nostalgia is used as like a huge marketing tool. So that's also what I was thinking of. I was thinking about that one particular study.
As our emo nostalgia podcast, I agree with all of it. What is the most emo song you are listening to right now?
It doesn't have to be emo in genre. It could just sound emo to
However you want to define it.
Can I look through my like last songs on Spotify here? Because I definitely... Oh, does any of the Five Nights at Freddy's music count?
Probably.
That's an interesting answer. Yeah, it could.
So that's a soundtrack. I've been like playing that whole soundtrack. Five Nights at Freddy's. Definitely not emo. We got Bob Marley. We got the Specials. I guess not emo either. Yeah, let's go with Five Nights at Freddy's.
All
I
right.
mean, listen, the entire premise is like it's pretty edgy, pretty.
It's horror game. It's horror movie.
It's
Like
adjacent.
it's always going to be adjacent to emo.
It's big furry mechanical furries murdering children. Like,
Yeah.
you
What's
know,
not
it
sad
just be
about
that way.
yeah.
I like that. We it's open ended to whatever people are
Yeah,
listening
whatever
to. But
it is.
I think it's always interesting to be like, we're going to talk about like your music, which is obviously more aligned in the emo scene and all that. And then it's like, what are you listening to? It's like, well, none of that. So so it's just always interesting where people come from for that.
Yeah, my stuff's all over the place.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration for your most recent album?
So it was mainly about kind of how crazy fame culture has gotten, especially for creators, and kind of how inverted the quest for fame has become. And I always felt that fame should be a byproduct that nobody really wants. I mean, like, yes, it helps you and everything, but you can be successful and very fulfilled creatively and have an amazing community and not necessarily be famous, because I think that comes with a lot of trappings that we've seen with many people: Marilyn Monroe, Michael Jackson, Judy Garland, Kurt Cobain. Like, what's the one thing that all these people, Elvis, what's the thing that they have in common? It's they just get famous way too fast, can't handle it, and end up losing it. So that kind of being a microcosm of how social media now has kind of ramped all that up, and the album's really about kind of rebelling against all of it and finding the individual core of who you are, kind of in an anonymous kind of setting, and how you fit into that world. And like a song like "Believe the Hype" is just completely ironic about believing everything you hear. I have a song called "Camera Boy," which has multiple meanings, but it basically, you live for the camera more than anything else when you're kind of chasing these things. Mindful Madness, about kind of slowly going into the descent of that whole situation. And so it was really about taking modern pop culture and completely inverting it. And that's what I try to do with the cover, by taking the most popular cover of all time and basically putting it in a microwave for an hour.
You're from Toronto, which we don't say correctly here in America, even though we're not that far from you in Chicago. But how would you describe the music scene in Toronto?
It's big. It's really diverse. It pretty much has everything. Every genre, subgenre you could possibly think of. We have a pretty healthy following. People are obsessed with music in Toronto. Because of that, it's a little bit... Because there's so much, there is a lot of competition sometimes. So it's not like a kumbaya kind of situation. Like, you'd be competing a lot if you're not playing within the same scene, I guess, in a lot of ways. But yeah, it's pretty healthy. It's pretty good. We have like a really good music grant system, for better or for worse. So like the Arts Council of Ontario and Canada is really supportive for artists, new ones, if they like you.
Yeah.
If they like it. Now we're going to get into the
We don't even
nitty-gritty
have
of it.
that in.
Yeah,
like,
we don't got nothing. They're like, you want to do music? Interesting. Have fun.
We don't get shit like that. So
Yeah, no, for sure. I have some Buffalo friends who I used to play with a lot of people in Buffalo, and they're like, we got none of that over here.
Yep.
But the thing the drawback of all these nice grants is, like, you really got to play by the government's rules. Mm-hmm. It's like the government is giving you money to fund your arts career, which is nice, but it's also not very punk rock, and you can't really do anything too crazy, because you have to put like the government of Canada approves this message essentially on your record, and
So we're pretty sure they're not sponsoring or funding any punk bands that go against anything the government.
Yeah.
Suffice to say,
They might give like some punk bands, like some pop punk bands, like some tour support and stuff, but ultimately you got to be in a box somewhat, from my understanding. I know I've submitted. Apparently, I've gotten very close, but no dice.
Are there any specific artists or venues or anything you want to shout out that are local for you that you're fans of? Oh, we talked about Sam Casey a little bit, but is there anybody else who you want to shout out from the area?
Absolutely. So I'm going to shout out Zoe Stara. She's a fantastic electronic pop artist from the area. There's also John Orpheus, who is an author mainly, but he's a great like dance hall, I guess modern hip hop electronic artist as well. A venue that I really like is there's two. There's one called Object Studio, which is kind of an alternative venue. It's in a converted loft. It used to be like the old slaughterhouse district of Toronto because we were known for slaughtering pigs. We used to be called Hogtown back in the day.
oh, interesting.
Yeah, Toronto history, and we were a big like pig meat producer, and yeah, so those have moved kind of more north. So the old slaughterhouses are empty. So now there are those big beautiful loft windows. So that's been converted into like a live music venue. There's another one called Content Day, which does shows and do photo shoots and video shoots and other fun stuff there. And they all host like art shows and things. And yeah, I mean, that's some of my favorite stuff right now.
That's cool. I feel like there's like more DIY spaces. We've had some DIY spaces here come back in Chicago after the pandemic, but it's not the same as it used to be previously. So I think it's cool that like there are more places like that. It sounds like in Toronto.
Well, and after COVID, these were kind of post-COVID experiments too, which was cool. We had a lot that died. A lot of older ones died off, and then these alternative art spaces like Content Day and Objects started growing, and it's great. They have like their own community that comes to them, and it's just a lot cooler than going to some venue where it has all its other trappings.
Why were some of the singles chosen, and were there any that was left on the cutting room floor that just ended up not being a single from the album?
So I chose the singles. We chose the singles the way we did simply because I thought that they would have the best or the strongest impact. So they're just songs that I thought were the most didn't have any kind of barriers of entry, I guess. It's kind of hard to explain. Like the deeper cuts is kind of like if you really understand, the Alex Exists world of music and art, you might not really get it upon first listen, and that's songs like Camera Boy or Free to Run, or like Mindful Madness. But songs like Everybody's Famous or Believe the Hype and Dancing with Chaos, I just thought were much more kind of, I guess, just easier to get into. And I just like really loved them, and I wanted to make videos for them as well. So, but it was really hard. I mean, I would make a video and release all of them as singles if I could, but it's just not on the cards. And yeah, and I always like to throw in one cover on every record. And this record I decided to do Instant Karma, which you probably know. And I completely did my own arrangement of it, just turned it into like a punk rock kind of doo-wop kind of thing. And I thought that it fit thematically with the record, with the whole, ego striving for something bigger than yourself, and, where you exist in this hierarchy of life and how you should act in it. So I thought Instant Karma was a good way to kind of bookend the record. So that's why I chose that. But, actually, yeah, With a Bang. I chose With a Bang for one of the singles just because, I don't know, I just liked it. I just thought it would be cool and a little bit less of a deep cut.
Okay, so it's kind of like based on like entry, basically. So you're like, this is me as an artist. Like, don't be overwhelmed by what you're getting into, because you're going to be overwhelmed in a good way.
Yeah, you're gonna experience this maximalist funhouse of like, all this stuff. So this is just the first couple rooms before you get into where all the carnies are.
This is before we get into the main area of Five Nights at Freddy's, is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Next question. We know you're doing a bunch of collaborations. You're doing the remixes for the record. But if you had a dream collaboration, so you can work with anybody in the world, producer, artist, who would you want to work with?
I'd love to work with Ryan Gildemond from Mother Mother. I don't know if you heard of those guys, but they're like a great Canadian band, amazing songwriter. Ryan writes great songs, and I know he's produced a couple artists before, so I would love to work with him on a production level. Maybe he can produce a song or a record. I thought would be pretty cool. If I were to produce somebody, I don't know, like a dream. When you say dream, do you mean like
you have no
anybody.
barriers? You could just whomever.
They have to be alive, though, right?
It would be easier.
Yeah,
but
I mean, we can there's probably time travel at this point. Who knows?
Okay.
Listen, have you not been on the Bridget Mendler?
Nope. It would be easier if they're alive, but if you're like, this is somebody I wish I could have worked with, that's probably fine too.
I love Karen O. Like she's
She's fantastic.
I would love to do something with her, and I know she does a lot of collabs also. So she's been amazing. I love reeling it back a little bit. I love Kate Bush. I would love to work with her. I love Tom Waits. I love even Maddie Heat. Like even doing something with. There's so many people, but I think Karen O has always been someone. I loved their records so much growing up, and I think she's a great artist.
That'd be tight.
Yeah, that'd be really sick.
Actually, also, and I'm sorry, Karen and everybody, but the person who I'd probably love to work with most is Yoko Ono.
Really?
Okay.
Like for real.
Yeah.
Like I seriously no sarcasm. I love her music. I love her as an artist. I love what she, as one of the first women to ever scream her guts out. I think she's totally punk rock and set the stage for so many different things conceptually as an artist, but also as a musician. And it goes much deeper than just the crazy sounds that she makes with her voice. And even then it's really impressive because the breath work that needs to be done. I think she's a great poet and everything, so I would love to produce something, love to work with her on some capacity.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's the most out of the left field, not in a bad way, but I was not expecting that we've ever gotten.
That's cool.
Honestly, I hope that she hears Instant Karma. I want her to hear the song, and if she digs the vibe and everything, then maybe we can make something happen. I haven't been doing it because I felt kind of guilty, but I was like, maybe we should just spam her Twitter and just be like, listen to this song, please.
Listen, sometimes it works. If there's enough people, they can be like, hey, you need to listen to this, please.
Yeah, and I promise I'm not wasting your time. I honestly think it's great. Just 3.5 minutes of your time, I would really appreciate.
Tag her. Drop a
We're gonna clip this for TikTok, and we're gonna. Does she have? I don't know if she has a TikTok. Maybe her son does, and then we'll just be like, "Hey."
Oh, Sean definitely does. He's all over. He's all over Twitter.
Oh, then we'll just tag him, be like, "Show your mom this real quick."
Sean, show your mom this.
Sean,
listen, come on, she's gonna get it. She's gonna get it.
Oh, she is gonna get it. She's gonna be. Why didn't you show me this sooner?
Yeah, she's gonna be like, come on, the kids, to be like, Yoko, you gotta get on TikTok now. And that would be a whole cultural reset moment within itself.
Let's do it.
Now that we have a plan for getting Yoko Ono on TikTok, our last question here is, do you have any upcoming shows or any future tour dates?
So I did all my touring and shows last year mainly to like the release party and a lot of shows. So there's nothing booked right now, but we're looking to book some more shows in the summer and at the end of the year. And right now it's just looking to be the next couple months. It's just a lot of production, a lot of songs, and no dates yet, but they should be coming.
Stay tuned. We can also run with that and say, where can people find you on the internet? Where can people be up to date on any tour dates, any shows that come up? Where can people listen to the music? Where can they support you if there's a place where they can, Bandcamp or whatever it is that is best for supporting you as an artist? Let's just drop that so everybody can go and be supportive.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. I mean, you can just find me at Alex Exists World. Is everything.com/Alex Exists World. And yeah, Bandcamp is great if you want to support me directly. My website, alexexist.ca, has like a donation page, and just typically all the other social medias if you just want to kind of get a glimpse into the world of what we're creating and have fun and everything. And yeah, drop me a line. I love hearing from people. It's always fun hearing from people around the world who I try not to be too unapproachable. You could I do read DMs. I think it's fun when people actually say how the music makes them feel. I know a lot of people get nervous sometimes, but yeah, don't be shy.
Spam the DMs. Spam Yoko Ono and then spam Alex Exists.
Yeah, we're going to do this. Hashtag get Yoko on TikTok.
Well, amazing. We'll go ahead. We'll wrap the interview there. And make sure if you're listening to this that you are following, because tour dates, collabs, albums, etc. It's all coming out. Alex Exists. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you. That was a pleasure. It was awesome.